Well, this is a very interesting article, and I can see a lot of connections to the esoteric sciences. And so I thought that I would definitely bring this information to your attention. Now, just before I do start this video, I just want to remind people that this video is for students of the esoteric sciences. I wish I didn't have to keep reminding people of this, but it seems that I continue to get these comments from people that tell me what they believe because they've heard it from somebody else, and they don't understand that these videos and this channel is about esoteric and occult information that we use, sciences that we use to have an understanding of what is occurring in our environment in these times. And so only certain people can really process information at that intellectual level. And I'm sorry if that sounds arrogant. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but when you do actually go and seek knowledge and have an understanding for esoteric knowledge, you then become more conscious and need to interact and relate with other conscious people who are also at that level of understanding of who they are and their place in creation. And so if some people choose to see that as me being arrogant or mean, as someone commented with on one of my videos, then I'm sorry, that's your emotional reaction to me and what I'm relating. And so if you feel that way, then that is because you choose to see and perceive what I'm doing in that way. I spend time bringing information to people because I spend time researching, and so I share it with other people who are interested in this information. I do it all on my own time. I don't sell any books. I don't have anything to gain other than just relating this information to others who are at a similar conscious level to me so that we can actually communicate and prepare ourselves for what is approaching mankind, what mankind is just blindly sleepwalking towards, and why the prophets left all of these warnings in the scriptures and in the texts, and even what these occult sciences are showing us about the cycle that we exist in. And the other element that we don't account for, which is ether, which has been removed, because the ether is also a very important element, and you have to understand that element to have the full picture of creation and the processes of creation. If people just dismiss that element to it, then you will fail to have an understanding of why we have prophets, of why these prophets have an understanding of divine knowledge, of why these prophets become mortals, in a sense, during the Iron Age, and why mortals can become godlike in a higher time in this cycle, in the highly conscious part, where all have access to their divinity if they're worthy. And this is the whole problem of mortal man and mankind as a whole, is that they do not want to believe that they have to be worthy to continue to exist as part of creation. They think that they can just use their free will to behave any way they wish. And because they've been given dominion, that comes with responsibility. So these people that like to relate humans to animals, well, that is just not a very good argument, because you are a human, you are a conscious being, you have been gifted with consciousness and abilities that animals have not, and therefore you have a responsibility for that power. And even though at sometimes in the cycle you don't have access to that full potential to who you are, doesn't mean that you then utilize what you do still have against the other creatures and species that you have dominion over, which is what mankind are doing now, and just utilizing animals for food as a commodity. They're not seen as a creature that has its own right to exist anymore. It's just a number. It's just a stake. It's just food. And so if people can't understand that humans have wandered off their path in the way that they perceive the creatures that exist with us, then, you know, really, this is where you have to identify that you've allowed yourself to become disconnected, because you have to reconnect into creation, and you have to once again find compassion and empathy for creation and look to see what mankind are doing to the animals and creation, and feel compassion for that, and then feel anger that basically gives you the way you feel, that reaction to that harm, that makes you want to react against it and stand against it. But people just don't want to do that. People just want to continue to accept reality as it is, and then just have the belief that we are going to continue on forever with full dominion over everything and never have to be accountable for our behaviour and the way we have defiled ourselves and nature, that we are just going to be tolerated and allowed to continue to do this even on a conscious level, because that's what people have to understand. There's a consciousness part to this as well that you have a responsibility for, and which you have also moved away from. So on all of these levels, everything must be addressed, and people don't seem to understand that, because we are in a time where we have been given enough rope to hang ourselves, basically. And so this has nothing to do with a vengeful God, because this is out of God's hands. This is universal law. This is just the light that returns, and whether a organic being, soul, spiritual as well, ethereal being, can sustain that light returning. And if not, if that person cannot sustain the light because they themselves do not have that within them, then they are removed from the experience. And so that's no one's fault but man's fault. So people can stop the blame and seeing it as the creator is evil, and, you know, people tend to say, well, you know, God is love and God would not be a vengeful God. Well, no, but it's about universal law, and God is also part of universal law, which is why the creator's influence leaves the physical plane and why it comes back. The creator is governed by laws too, just like the moon waxes and wanes, and it's all governed by the same universal principles, which everything is basically built upon, which is why I say, if you know the bones and the backbone of the laws of creation, then everything's built upon that. That's why it's important to have an understanding for Hermetics if you're going to understand the esoteric sciences, and you're going to fully understand all of the information that's relayed in these videos. So anyway, let's have a look at this article, because I did think it was quite interesting, because it goes on to say that Prophet Muhammad, now Muhammad is just the Messiah of the yellow race, okay? So we've got the four Messiahs, we've got the white Messiah, we've got the red Messiah, the yellow Messiah, and the black Messiah, okay? All who are not illuminated and are unaware of their divinity. But at a stage in the cycle when they are aware of their divinity, well, one of these messiahs of the yellow race, Muhammad, has left scripture and has left information, because the divine man, of course, understands the cycle we exist in and knows that we are going to descend in that cycle, and so leaves information to warn of these times. But divine man also knows it's about being worthy, and so they hide all of the information in parables and symbols and the esoteric sciences, because they know that it's only the true seeker, the most conscious seeker, that comes at this with a pure heart, without having any agenda, any previous beliefs, but they just purely want truth. They know that those people will seek out an understanding for themselves and will find the sciences, because these sciences and this knowledge is a part of all of us. Not only divine man, but also mortals as well, because it's just part of us as a world soul that we have an understanding for this information. It's whether our consciousness overrides that sits within our soul, which sits within our intuition and our knowing. If our consciousness overrides that all the time with what we've been told and what we've been led to believe, then we're not going to remember that part of who we are and listen to it and find the path where that leads. And you have to do that now, because basically that's what this requires. When we come into this part of the cycle, you have to move down into your intuition, and you have to really start letting that guide you, your gut guide you, your heart and gut rather than your heart and mind, and get a feeling for whether something is right or wrong on that feeling, and trust it. Even if everything else is showing you no, you've got to go against that. You've got to trust it, because that's what having trust in who you are and the Creator and your divinity is. This is like the parable of Daniel in the lion's den. It's about trusting and having that gut instinct in trusting. And when you do, the ethereal makes itself available to you, and you can recognize it, you can identify it, because when you're unaware of the ethereal and that exists and that the occult exists, then you can't see it, you are blind to it. It's like that saying, people who don't believe in magic will never see magic, and that's truth, because these are the occulted laws of creation that exist in a realm beyond the physical, which is what we're used to. And so it requires a different perception of who you are. It requires somebody to be on a more intellectual and conscious way of processing information, rather than just consuming it like we do all the time in the media, just consuming what they tell us. And so when you have an understanding for the esoteric sciences, you can actually look at the information that they give us, but you can see it for what it is. You can look beneath the lines and beneath the surface story that they give everybody else, and you can see what they're really relaying here. And they actually are saying that the Prophet Muhammad did leave a warning about ISIS, not particularly ISIS, but that there would be groups like ISIS, and that people would basically be following corrupted clergy and corrupted religions. And so I find this interesting, that I'm not a Muslim and I'm not a Christian, yet I can see the warnings clearly left in scripture and texts for mankind to be on the alert for there's going to be a thief that's going to try and enter the house, and you best be prepared. And it seems that people's guards are completely down, because they're just happy to accept the information that is given to them through the media, and they accept it as absolute truth, because also they've been programmed to take information from certain people and see those people as being truthful and being people that are in possession of knowledge, such as people that wear white coats, like scientists and doctors. And so people have now given over their intuition and their own understanding of themselves and the laws of creation to the scientists, and allowed them to dictate to them what actual beliefs to have. And they don't understand that they've done this, because they think that it is based on something physical that can be actually proven on that level, and it just can't, because it has been proven that for creation to have just suddenly appeared from nothing is like having to toss a coin billions of times and it land heads. every single time. I mean, it's just the odds are not logical. It cannot compute. And so, therefore, you have to factor in something beyond. And this is where scientists have convinced mankind to not have to consider that in the equation anymore, because all of their science will address everything, and it just doesn't. This is why we still have so much disharmony amongst the collective, because nobody knows what to believe anymore. Everybody's just arguing their programming to each other. The scientists are arguing their programming to the religiotards, who are arguing their programming to the scientists, and we're just in this never-ending cycle of nobody ever really achieving anything, because everyone's just taking it from the establishment anyway, instead of going and seeking out the occult sciences and the esoteric for themselves. And so nobody ever advances. We just stay stagnated, which is where they want us, which is where the Antichrist want us to stay, while they just sit back and laugh. And so it goes on to say that 14,000 years ago, Muhammad prophesied that a time would come when nothing would remain of Islam but its name, and nothing of the Quran but its word, and that many mosques would be splendidly furnished but destitute of guidance. And I mean, this can be pretty much related to every single one of the religions, because they're all corrupted now. And so Muhammad was warning of this and saying, be aware that eventually it's all going to fall into corruption, and all it will have is the appearance, okay, splendidly furnished. Reminds me of the Vatican as well. In these latter days, the true spiritual essence of Islam would be lost. People don't really understand what all of these philosophies are about anymore. They don't understand it's about divine man and woman and mortals and their responsibilities to creation and the cycles that they exist in. That's been removed. The sciences have been removed as well. And so people don't have an understanding for the actual philosophies that they follow anymore. They just follow the corrupted version. And it goes on to say, and religion for the most part would be reduced to a ritualistic compulsion. Look at them all at Mecca. I mean, you know, even when the Pope comes and stands on the balcony in Rome, everyone's crying and, you know, with their crosses and their rosaries and their hands in the air. Again, they've fallen into this corruption and this mindless worship, which they were warned against. And he foretold that the clergy would be corrupt and a source of strife during these times. Well, head Jesuit pretty much confirms that. And they're the ones who have created ISIS. And again, they've hidden it right in front of everybody's faces. There's no secret why they called it ISIS. There's no secret why they've removed the divine female from all of the scripture and, you know, everything that's relevant in the philosophies anymore. So again, it seems to me the warnings are clear, but still people seem quite blind to how they're being played by the Antichrist. And then he goes on to say that terrorist groups such as ISIS would try and hijack the Islamic faith. There would appear to be a group of young people who would be immature and in thought and foolish. They would speak beautiful words but commit the most heinous of deeds. And so this is also the Vatican once again and the religious leaders, just like Buddhism and the Dalai Lama, who speak these beautiful words and everyone's just so convinced he's a lovely old man and wise and he just wants love and peace for the world. And in actual fact, he has pedophilia rampant through all of his Buddhist monasteries, which he never addresses, and which no doubt he partakes in. And goes on to say they would engage in so much prayer and fasting that the worship of the Muslims would appear insignificant in comparison. They would call people to the Quran, but it would have nothing to do with it in reality. So again, what I keep telling people when they try to throw everything out with religion, they don't understand the religions are corrupted. And so you can't just say get rid of religion, because that's like saying get rid of us, get rid of our divinity. And that means you've been brainwashed successfully. It's worked. The Antichrist have got you to turn your back on your God and divinity by just corrupting the words. And this is the thing too. All of the words are corrupted, but you can still go to all of the symbolism and it's intact. So learn the language of the symbols too, because they're the other sciences that were left there for you, but you all just seem to want to look at the word all the time. And the word can be corrupted. The word can be used to mean many things, but the symbols give you an understanding of the context of the word. So you can actually look at the correct word instead of the ones they just basically twist and use for their own agenda. And then it goes on to say their hearts will be as hard as iron. And I find that very interesting that Muhammad used that in his terminology, because Iron Man is where we're at. Iron Man is mortal man. Well, actually it's iron and clay man. And Iron Man actually represents the 10,000 elect within the mortals, and the 10,000 elect are attached to the 144 tribes, or 288 divine in the divine race. And so they are known as Iron Man, and Iron and Clay Man are then the mortals, who are basically what is going to be removed at the end of the cycle, because they have allowed themselves to turn as hard as iron in their hearts. And so they will be accountable for that. And so this is why these prophecies were left. This is just another confirmation, just confirms the rest of what we already have, confirms the rest of what the esoteric information is already showing us. And so we need not be in a state of ignorance anymore if we just understand these sciences and what they were really relating to, and what Rome has tried to hide, and that is that we do have a divine race within mankind. The four creatures symbolise the four different races within them, which is white race, eagle. Then we have red race, which is man, winged man. Bull is yellow race. And we have lion as black race. Okay? Tribe of Dan, tribe of Ephraim, Reuben, tribe of Ephraim, and tribe of Judah. So we've got tribe of Dan, tribe of Reuben, tribe of Ephraim, tribe of Judah. People should start having an understanding for that. If you're all in these races, you should start having an understanding for the symbol that relates to you, your divinity, and because they're trashing that symbol. They're trashing your divinity. So if you don't understand this, you're just ignorantly allowing them to trash what is great within you, because you have a connection to divinity and to the Creator through all of divine man, the divine children of God. And so this is why it's very sad that people don't understand their true origins and how they should be proud of them, and not have to enter into any of these arguments about this racist bullshit, because each of the races has greatness within them. Each of the races has a Messiah and a divine race, or Messiahs and a divine race, both male and female. And so people have to understand that these tests are being left here for a reason, and you have been allowed to forget your divinity for a reason. And so if you've happened to find this information and once again have an understanding for that, then that's something that you have to once again embrace, and then hold the light for others so that they have an understanding for it. And so even the Norse mythology says we'll be in these times as well. Brothers will fight together and become each other's bane. Sisters' children their sib shall spoil. Hard is the world, sensual sins grow huge. There are axe ages, sword ages, shields are cleft in twain. There are wind ages, wolf ages, ere the world falls dead. Cycles, the Ragnarok, which is also what the Norse were speaking of. It is the Norse version of what the Christians call Judgment Day, what Revelations is about. It's all written there for a reason. Just like Kali, the goddess Kali. You know, this is all in all of the different mythologies and left there for a reason. But it's been corrupted for a reason. So you don't know this. Again, in the Gospel of Thomas, very clear. The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us, how will our end come?" Jesus said, "Have you found the beginning then, that you are looking for the end? You see, the end will be where the beginning is. Congratulations to the one who stands at the beginning. That one will know the end and will not taste death." Esoteric sciences. This is how you need to understand Scripture properly, because this is what the parables are alluding to. 57, Jesus said, "The Father's kingdom is like a person who has good seed. His enemy came during the night and sowed weeds amongst the good seed. The person did not let the workers pull up the weeds, but said to them, 'No, otherwise you might go and pull up the weeds and pull up the wheat along with them. For on the day of the harvest, the weeds will be conspicuous and will be pulled up and burned.'" So we can just see this information is relayed over and over again. But again, when you don't understand the sciences, then the parables don't make much sense. That people need to understand that we exist in a cycle and that the element of ether is part of that cycle. And on the ether, we also have the light returning. Christ consciousness is returning. And people are now starting to awaken to who they are if they are not trapped mentally in the program that the Antichrist have given them, which Muhammad was warning about. So, I'll put this article underneath and you can read this in full. And I'll leave it here. But as always, peace out.